Justin Morris here from Mind Matters Athlete Coaching. And as a coach, I spend a lot of time with my athletes training the head, the heart, the lungs, and the legs, which are the most important tools as an athlete. As a cyclist, we have another important tool, which often doesn't get talked as much about in the coaching circles, but will be a big factor when it comes to performance. And that is our bicycle. So we're going to do a series where we go across our bicycles, road bikes and mountain bikes, and talk about the different points in the bike that can enable performance and points in the bike that are just a bit of a waste of time and baloney that the bike industry is kind of marketing upon us. So the first episode we're going to chat about tyres, wheels and brakes. Three very important things. First things first, let's start with the tyre. This is the bit of rubber that connects you to the ground. So it's very, very important. Your safety is dependent on the tyre, as is your speed. Now these days, as opposed to when I started, which is going back 2 decades now, there's many, many different sizes of tyre to choose from. And when I say sizes, I'm talking about the width of tyre. Initially, back in the late 90s, most people racing would run a 21C tyre. Now the number 21 refers to how wide the tyre is, 21 very, very narrow. Then we went to 23C tyres, which was a standard for a long, long time. Now, the sky is the limit. When it comes to buying road bikes, we've got 25, we've got 28. Even some road bikes are seen with 30C tyres, which is very, very wide. The wider the tyre, the more comfortable it's going to be to ride. But there is a point where the things you gain in comfort, you lose in speed. So subsequently, they've done studies that say a 25C tyre, which is this width here, is apparently the fastest tyre going around. Now I was running 25C for quite a while, but I found it just the feeling of it was a bit sluggish compared to the traditional 23C. So subsequently, on my race wheels here, and we'll come back to what race wheels are and what training wheels are in a bit, I've gone back to 23C tyres. Now the most important thing when it comes to tyres, and in fact every component on the bike, is what makes you feel fast. True, the data may say that a 25C is a faster tyre, but the gains you make from the scientific studies to ascertain what's faster over, say, 40 kilometres, you will definitely make up for in the feeling of feeling fast. So I encourage you, when it comes to tyre size, you choose what feels the fastest for you. The narrower the tyre, the lighter it's going to be, and the higher pressure you can run. They've also done studies to find out what's the best pressure to run tyres at. I see some clowns riding around with 120, 130 psi in their tyres. They actually done a study and found that 115 psi was the most efficient and fastest pressure to have your tyres at. And that's when we're talking about 23C. You still had the traction and you also had the speed of going fast in a straight line. So tyres, again, also important, not just because it's traction and it's your connection between the bike and the ground. It's also the rotating weight of your bike. This is the first thing to get rotated when you push the pedals down. So the lighter weight your rotating weight is on the bike, the faster you're going to go. No use worrying about buying lightweight saddles, lightweight stems, lightweight handlebars, stuff like this. This is where you gain performance. Go on lightweight in the rotating weight of the bike. So very light tyres, going to be a very fast tyre, but they won't last very long. So you want it to be you want to have a durable tyre for training and a lightweight tyre for racing. Subsequently, what I recommend is having 2 sets of wheels. A training set where you have a nice, heavy, durable, long-lasting tyre and preferably a very heavy wheel as your training set. This is what you're doing your miles on, and you on these wheels, running the wider tyre is going to make more sense because it's going to be heavier and more comfortable. It's what you're doing your long miles on, and having that as a nice heavy wheel that you're doing your hard training on. Then come race day, I bang these deeper dish, lighter weight carbon wheels on here as my race wheels. Having these as race wheels, you not only get the actual scientific data driven boost of them being lighter weight and rotating easier, you're going to feel like you're dancing when you put those race wheels on if you've done your hard miles on your training wheels. So rotating weight, tyres, very important. The wheel itself, some wheels are much deeper dish. The dish refers to how deep this part of the wheel is. This is a reasonably deep dish, about a 50, 60 mil deep dish wheel. The deeper the dish, the faster it is in a straight line. So if you're doing a time trial or say a flat criterium and you're planning on doing a solo breakaway, deep dish wheel's the way to go. The other big thing you'll see in wheels is the material they're made from. This one is a mixture of carbon fibre, very lightweight, and aluminium. Aluminium, heavier, but is a much more abrasive surface, so the braking is much better on an aluminium rim. So subsequently, why this wheel has carbon fibre down here and aluminium as the braking surface. You can get wheels which are all carbon fibre, so carbon fibre braking and carbon fibre dish. They mean your braking performance is going to drop. If you're, say, riding in the rain and you're running your carbon rim, your braking is going to be not non-existent, but you're going to struggle to stop in a hurry. So if I see people riding around training on carbon wheels with carbon braking surfaces, I mean, you're not doing yourself many favours. They don't last very long, your braking is piss poor, and you're not getting that advantage of training on your heavy, hard wheels. So save your carbon wheels for racing, make sure you've got the specific carbon brake pads in there, and you'll be okay. That brings me to the next point, brakes. Now this bike has a traditional rim brake with a direct mount. Direct mount means there's two little bolts here, whereas traditionally there was just one. Means it's got two pivot points here. So they're quite powerful brakes. You've got a good amount of power in them. Now the thing that I want to point out, we'll go to the front brake here to point it out a bit easier. I've got quite a big length of cable between the activation point and the mount here, meaning that I've got a long pull in the brake lever. Your wheels, when you're putting a lot of watts down through the pedals, the wheels are going to flex. So you want to have as much of a gap between the rim and the brake pad as possible, so that when you're out of the saddle dumping them watt bombs down, your wheel's not going to touch the brakes. So I see some people just pulling up these brakes real tight and only having a tiny millimetre of pull on the brake lever. You don't want that. You want to have a nice big throw on the brake lever. Feels better for modulation, and also you're not going to get brake rub when you're out of the saddle dropping watt bombs down. That brings me to the last point I want to chat about on this episode. The different brakes that are up for grabs now on new bikes. These brakes are becoming a thing of the past, so you might not really need to worry about that point that I just mentioned then. These days we're going to disc brakes, which are down here, and they come from the mountain biking world. Disc brakes, much more powerful, perform much better in wet weather, but they're very heavy. So when they first got brought into the road bike world, I thought it was a load of baloney, because you spent so much time, so much R&D in making these road bikes as light as possible, and then all of a sudden they're going chucking disc brakes on them all, which add a ton of weight to the bike. But you do get the increase in braking power, and the main benefit I'll point out with disc brake road bikes, and I would say if you're buying a road bike now and you want to be able to sell it in the future, probably does make sense to go a disc brake road bike, because the manufacturers aren't really giving us much choice. A lot of them have stopped making rim brake bikes altogether. One of the biggest benefit is not actually the brake, but what I'll point out, I've got disc brakes here on my cyclocross bike, is the fact that a disc brake uses a through axle. It means that the quick release action of the axle goes through the forks here, as opposed to just being clamped in a dropout underneath. This makes the wheel much stiffer and faster and more stable. So if you're coming out of corners or on a tight, twisty course, the bike's going to feel much more stable. Also, in wet weather, these disc brakes are going to give you a lot more surety, and you're not going to get that difference in braking between an aluminium braking surface and a carbon braking surface. It's always going to be the same. So this is the way of the future, but like I said, the traditional rim brake, much lighter weight, and is my preferred option. So next episode we might have a yarn about the group set, which again has had a huge change over the past 5 or 6 years, and maybe we'll go into pedals and some bearings and stuff like that. Any questions, shoot them through to me, and we'll see you out on the road.